nobody thinks that they're going to get cancer. You know what I mean? So pretty much exactly 4 years ago, I recognized that something was just not right. And I was going through a really stressful time at home because my husband was battling some psychoses and a mental health thing that was escalating over the last couple of years prior to that. And so I went to the doctor because my monthly cycle, I had just turned 40, and my monthly cycle had just stopped. And I just said, something's not right. And
you didn't think it might have been menopause or something?
Well, he did.
Okay.
So he thought it was menopause, and he thought maybe I was pregnant because a few months prior everything was just
But you
normal.
intuitively felt something different?
I just felt something wasn't right. And then he said it was just anxiety. And then I said, but I've been through like many stressful years with all this. How could my cycle just stop? And for like 5 months, nothing. And then September, and I'm a teacher, so school started, and all of a sudden everything sort of came back, but like from the opposite extreme, so from stopping to really natural. And
Right.
I went for a few weeks with the cycle kind of continuing on. I know this is kind of graphic, and then my sister said, this is really not normal. You should really, really, really get help. And so I went and insisted on seeing a gynecologist, and then that's when they discovered that I had cancer, and it was very aggressive. It was already stage 4.
What was it like to actually hear someone say that to you and say, you have cancer?
I'm a science teacher, right? And ironically, the following week I was supposed to start the chapter on cancer with my grade 9 science class. And so my mind was geared there because I was about to teach it. So she was very, very like, I think we need to redo the biopsy. I think something's wrong. And then I'm all like, are there abnormally growing cells? And she said, yeah. So I said right off the bat, like I didn't wait for her to say it.
Yeah.
I said, so are you scared this might be cancer? And she said, I want to rule that out. And I said, okay, well, let's just redo the biopsy. And I was gripped with fear because at this point I'm a single mom, 2 young kids. And
because your husband was...
Because my husband, we had separated.
Yeah.
It was just kind of unsafe and scary at the time.
Do you feel like some of the mental health issues that he was going through maybe contributed to some of the stress that may have been a factor?
Absolutely. Like I could never blame him because he was
you
mentally
can't blame
ill.
anybody with mental illness.
But the stress that we were under as a family, it's like the frog in boiling water thing. Mm-hmm. You just don't feel how stressful you are until it just blows up in your face. And I think that's what happened. My body just couldn't take it anymore.
So you got the diagnosis, she redid the biopsy, and then what happened?
See, my family has a really strong faith in God and Jesus. And I was like feeling, well, this is where the rubber meets the road. Like I either believe in God or I don't in this situation. I was really scared. And so I felt that I should just pray and just ask for strength. And so that morning I didn't know that I had cancer yet, but I knew I would find out. And I actually prayed that I would somehow just know that I wasn't going to die. And that's what I needed to just know to get me through this journey kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because I thought, I can do it with his strength. I can do it.
Just taking that step in faith.
Yeah, but knowing that I was going to be okay at the end. Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to kind of know. How do you know that? You're not going to hear a big doo-doo-doo voice.
Yeah.
But what happened was I truly asked that, and then I was teary, and I didn't want my kids to see because I don't know anything yet. I'm not going to scare them with something that I don't even know about. So I was sort of searching around for a Bible or just something that I would have something to sort of hang on to. And I couldn't find anything, but I had my phone, which I don't have, and there's like Bible apps on there.
Right.
So I went on that, and I think I shared this with you, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, where do I look in the Bible for death? I have no idea. So I just opened it up, and I was waiting for it to turn on, and it turned on and froze on a verse in the book of Psalms, and I couldn't move it with my finger like you're supposed to.
It was frozen. The screen was frozen.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at what it was frozen on, and it said, "You will not die, but you will live to recount the deeds of the Lord." And it freaked me out. I thought I was on camera or something. Like, what? That's never happened to me before. So it was very, very real for me.
Did you get chills?
Yeah, totally. And it gave me instant peace. And during these last 3.5 years, I'm not going to lie and say I haven't had moments of fear, but I keep going back to that. And my own kids, they know about this story. And my daughter, who's now 13, she was 10 at the time, she'll say, "Remember what God told you? You're not going to die, so chill out." If I get freaked out or worried about the next thing.
So how was it telling your kids after that? So
It was hard.
Yeah.
But they had just done the Terry Fox run, and that's what made it hard, because they remembered that Terry Fox had done this courageous thing, but he still ended up dying.
Right.
And so I had to explain.
How do you explain it to your kids?
I think everyone is different. In my opinion, with the way my kids are, I just felt that to educate them and to be absolutely honest and to go through the journey together was way more empowering for them than to pretend everything was okay. That's how I dealt with it.
So you've tried to shelter them a little bit from your pain, is that?
Well, I haven't. I feel really blessed, but I haven't struggled with a lot of pain.
No.
No.
Even through chemo?
Not at all. It made me feel better because I was so weak from all of the menstrual stuff.
Right.
And then when I started the chemo, it started making me feel better. The hardest part was losing my hair. I lost it twice, actually, over the last 3 years. And that was a little hard on them because suddenly they saw me with like nice, long, flowing hair, and I was just all patchy, you know?
Yeah.
So as a family, we shaved my head and tried on and laughed at me in different hats. They like to laugh at me, and I think it's sometimes a little hard, but it makes it fun, you know?
Yeah, bringing humor to anything kind of makes it, softens things a little bit.
Yeah.
And for people around you, now, one question I have when people go through any kind of illness or anything, do people treat you differently now when they find out they have cancer? Do you ever feel like lots of people I talk to will say, you know, just treat me like me, don't pity me, don't, you know, treat me any differently.
I think that's why some people are so private about it, because they do, like, you know, in Penticton I've had such an amazing support network through my own school where I teach at Penn High, and through our church, the Vineyard Church.
So rewind it a little bit, because I remember when I met you at the conference there, well, after many years of not seeing you, you told me that the doctors had told you had 5% chance of living at the time?
Yeah, well, actually, they didn't actually tell me that. Because I had received that verse, I didn't want to hear it from them because I needed to just stay away from negative thinking, kind of. So when they're telling me, you know, you better have your will ready by Christmas, and we're in Halloween, then all of a sudden I'm thinking, uh-oh. So I wouldn't look it up on the internet. I didn't do any research.
Yeah.
I just thought I'm going to do what they tell me to do, which was at that time 6 months of chemo.
And then go there.
And then not go there, yeah. And then so after 6 months of chemo, so now we're at like spring of 2013 type thing, I felt way better. I was very bald, but I felt way better. And then I asked the doctor, now what? And she said, now we just wait for it to come back. And I thought, what? I don't really like that idea. So I actually started inquiring, like, what else? Could we have surgery? And then she was leery about it because she thought it's already everywhere. It had been everywhere because it had metastasized it to my neck. It was uterine, fallopian, ovarian, lymph nodes, neck.
Oh my
and that's all we
goodness.
knew. And so it's microscopic, right? So it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
But what you see is what you know. And so that's why I did chemo. Now, chemo doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, so they hoped it had all remained in here. And after 6 months, everything had shrunk down so much that all that was left, is what they said, was in the uterus there was something this big, but they said it was just scar tissue.
Okay.
And then I said, well, how do you know? What if at the center of that there's something?
When you're the science, right?
Yeah.
So you're...
I guess, yeah. It's a good and bad thing, being a science person.
because you know more.
You know too much sometimes. But so I asked if I could meet somebody to do a surgery, and they did a full hysterectomy, pulled out everything, like fallopian tubes and ovaries as well. And in doing so, they discovered, well, two things actually, that, yeah, at the center of it there was live cells. So it would have just been a matter of time.
Yeah.
And then secondly, that it wasn't uterine cancer, actually, it was ovarian.
Oh.
It had moved to the uterus. And that in itself was actually a bit of a miracle, because when my second child was born, I was supposed to have I had a prolapsed uterus, and so I was supposed to have it actually surgically removed, but then it sort of just righted itself again.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. So when I found out I had uterine cancer, I was like, seriously?
Because you
I could have avoided this, I thought. Like,
Right.
I would have had no uterus, but actually it would have been worse because it would have remained in the ovaries and fallopian tubes. Because when they take out your uterus, they don't take out the other two usually to avoid menopause too young. And so it would have been a silent cancer.
And they would have not known.
Yeah, and because it interrupted my menstrual cycle, I knew something was wrong right from day one. So I didn't know about the 5% until So I had a hysterectomy, and a year later, they found a tumor in the brain. And that happened. It was very strange. I had a CT scan done of my neck to pelvic area, and I was looking at something on the wall, on the ceiling, and as a result, my head was tipped back too far, and it caught a corner of my brain, and they found something, and they redid a scan of my brain. So I've had lots of these things. That's what makes my journey kind of a little bit more, definitely not fun, but I keep thinking, hopeful, yeah. It seems like somebody's looking out for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so they found a tumor there, and they decided to do surgery. And again, like they told me, you might be lose balance, you might not be able to walk properly, you might have to go through physio. There's so many things, there's so many risks with surgery. And I was walking perfectly straight the very next day. So it was really, really good. So I had surgery in the summer of 2014. And then I was good for a whole year. And in the summer of 2015, which was last summer, they discovered that it was recurring in the brain. So that means that it either just started up again, or a tiny cell was left behind after the surgery. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but because the chemo doesn't cross into the brain, you just don't know if that's going to happen, yes or no. So all the chemo that they did was great, but it didn't do anything to the brain. And then in December, I had scans, and I was A-okay. Everything looked good. Perfectly fine here for 3 years, like nothing here.
Yeah.
And then my brain was good.
Yeah.
And then in February, they did a scan just 3 months ago. And then suddenly they're like, uh-oh. It was hard to hear, actually, because I thought I was good and clear.
That you were healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they told me that there was something in my pelvic area and something in my brain, and they didn't know what those somethings were. And I had actually planned a mission, like to go on a missions trip to Mexico with my kids.
Right.
And I had thought, for the last 10 years, or 15 years really, the 10 years that my husband was quite sick, ex-husband, and then the 3 years of this cancer, we haven't been able to plan anything. Because it's impossible to really plan with little kids, it's hard. And then with a husband who's unpredictable.
Right.
So we really didn't ever do anything except for at the very last minute, I would take the kids camping. I did everything by myself with them.
Yeah.
And then he came when he could. He did his best through all that, I'm sure.
So doctors told you not to go to Mexico.
Yeah, they said it was irresponsible. My brain was swelling, but I felt so strongly that we should go. And I had made that plan, and they were so excited,
And how could you tell your kids?
I couldn't send them without me.
Yeah.
Even though we were joining a team, we all had to arrive there independently.
Yeah. And so how was that trip? Because you obviously didn't listen to the doctors.
It was a hard decision. Yeah. I had opposing opinions. I had a couple doctors say, you know what, it's your life, live your life. You're going to be fine. The risk of this turning into a seizure or anything is so low because of where the tumor is.
Right.
So I listened to them, actually. And then I had a few other doctors who were just unsure, and they're not going to tell me to do something that could potentially be a risk.
Right.
So they just thought, don't take the risk.
So are you happy that you went? And what did you guys do there?
We built a house. We were only there for a week. We helped out in the children's home. It was at a place in a city called Primo Tapia, which is just south of Tijuana.
Yeah.
And they have a home called Casa de Luz, which means House of Light. And they basically take kids, like a long daycare, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so that single moms can work.
Okay.
And not have to put their kids in an orphanage.
So going through cancer, and you've got a lot of things going on in your own life, how do you have the energy to go and be doing something like a mission trip to give back to other people? Like, where'd you find it in you to want to do that?
I mean, to go back to another faith-based value and idea, I think that a lot of people who are Christians follow is that I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me. And it's totally true. I see a lot of people, they didn't know, except for my crazy hair, they wouldn't ever know that I had cancer.
Well, you're so positive. You have a light about you.
And that is a choice still. It's a day by day, even moment by moment choice sometimes. Because, I mean, when they told me that I had this pelvic thing going on and this brain thing just a few months ago, your first instinct is to go, what? And to, just naturally fear. And then I have to make a choice to trust.
Did you ever get angry?
I wouldn't say angry where I would be.
Well, like this, the steps of grief.
Yeah. If I did, it's just moments, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I just had to truly choose to believe it would all be okay. And getting that verse on that first day was like a gift.
Yeah.
Because
something to hold on to.
Yeah, and actually for the most part, the last 3.5 years I've been pretty down to earth, choosing, fighting through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I got the gift of that verse that first day. And then the day that I was supposed to find out in February, just 2 months ago, I was just reading this book and it made reference to a verse in the Bible, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, and I decided to look it up. And then the verse was in the book of Isaiah, and it said, when you go through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the rivers, you will not drown. When you go through the fire, you will not be consumed or burned up. And I'm like, when? But I'm good, right? And I had this like total premonition feeling like, today when you go to the doctor, you might hear something. So it was true, like when she told me that I had something in both spots now, and that this is not good.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm going to walk through the fire and I'm going to walk through the rivers, but I won't drown. That was the promise, and in the beginning.
Wow.
So I have to, again, it's like a day-by-day choice of just trusting that this isn't something wacky that I'm believing in, but it's truly something real,
And your kids share that faith with you.
Yeah, they do.
So when you're having your down days wondering, are they your rock at all? Like,
I have down moments. I wouldn't really say a whole day, ever.
And then there's people that have like, stupid things happening in their day. Like I was upset today because these people didn't listen to me in the way I wanted to make a t-shirt. And just the petty, silly things that we complain about every day.
It's funny because when things started getting better, like last year, there was a whole year where I was good, then those petty things start to bug me too. It's weird. And when I'm in the worst of it, I feel stronger.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, that's, again, I can only answer that on a faith-based aspect. I can't explain it.
One other question, I know people go to faith when they're struggling with any kind of things in their life, right? But what about people wanting to send you all these kinds of cures and things? Do you have a lot of people being like, oh, you tried this medicine, or have you tried smoking marijuana? Have you tried doing the, are people...
Everything. I get everything. It's so overwhelming, you almost want to try nothing.
Yeah.
And just say, I'm going to go drink my Coke and eat my Mars bar.
And the coffee or whatever.
Yeah. And, some of it, I've been watching documentaries and stuff, and I try things. Like, I've tried quite a few things.
Have you tried medical marijuana?
Not yet, but I'm actually I've been listening about some that doesn't have THC in it, so it won't have the effects.
Why wouldn't you want that? I'm just kidding.
I've got kids.
I'm just kidding.
They're entering into their teenagers. Good example, right?
They come home, you're like flying through the living room.
No.
So there are things that you're going to try, or
I'd like to look into that one. It's got, I forget the names now. It's CBN A, G, and D or something.
And how do you react to people that are, I'm sure people probably sending you messages or being like, oh, well, this worked. And that everyone's got good intentions. They're trying to help and they want to help you. But is there a point where you just back off and let me figure this out myself?
I think in the very, very beginning, I was very overwhelmed because it was a new thing. And so I started wanting to read everything. And I was thinking everything from putting lemons in everything to
because the whole alkaline and acidic thing.
And acidic, yeah. And all of that, and the no sugar thing, and then you start trying everything, but it's so overwhelming. You feel so responsible. If I don't do this one thing, am I at fault? And that's not really fair.
Right.
So and then in the beginning, I also didn't know how to say no, so I accepted everything, but then I created a file or a folder in my email that's like just medical ideas or whatever.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll just throw it in there and then I'll read it when I can.
Yeah.
Because it seems to come in waves, right?
Well, and it's good that you have that science background too, because then you can kind of, you can look at, some people get a little overwhelmed when they look at scientific reports and, studies and.
Ironically, I'm not a researcher.
Oh, no?
No, so I can get it, I can understand it,
Yeah.
but I don't enjoy
Oh, I'm like,
all
I like
the
to
reading.
just.
Yeah, some people are like that, and
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't know.
Another thing we talked about on the phone was you're talking about how it was hard for you for vanity. I know you said you lost your hair twice.
That was actually, I think, one of the hardest things, especially, and it sounds so superficial and vain,
Yeah.
but especially as being a teacher, you're in front of people all the time, and so then you're thinking 30 people are looking at you, and you're not even comfortable looking at yourself in the mirror because you don't even look like you. I don't feel like I look like me, even now.
So
Like,
how did you get past that?
a lot of, like, the people that love you the most, if you say anything, they're like, what? You're beautiful, or what are you talking about? And they're genuinely shocked when you say things. So then you have to, again, try to choose to trust them.
Well, women are
Otherwise-
their own worst enemies too when it comes to
you only need one
vanity.
bad comment, right?
You're like, what?
You keep reverting back to that.
Exactly. Like the
Yeah.
other day, someone asked me if I was a goalie for hockey because I'm playing hockey in May. I'm like, what do you mean? Are you saying I'm fat? Like it's so ingrained in us, this vanity that, and so I always think about having to go through all these different things. And, you're saying one of the worst things is losing your hair. You think that one of the worst things would be chemo or like long hours of radiation and things like that.
Yeah. Well, the radiation's really quick. The chemo takes all day long.
What's the difference?
Chemo is just I don't take the pills. I've never had that.
Okay.
But it goes in your body.
Okay.
And so when I go, they put an IV in, and you can get a port, which is permanent or temporarily permanent.
Yeah.
You don't take it out when you go home. But I go and just get an IV in, and then you sit there for hours, and then they put a poison in your body, really. And then the poison is sort of directed towards the cancer, certain types of cancer. So certain types of cancer take certain types of poison.
Yeah.
And then the other cells do get affected. And in my case, like, I think lucky is the wrong word, but I was blessed. That's a better word. Because I really didn't have any other side effects from the chemo.
And you're even saying, even now, you're like, you feel great. So
Yeah, I've only had the one round this
Right.
time around,
Yeah.
but I don't have any effects at all.
All right. So before you were diagnosed with cancer the first time,
Yeah.
was there anybody that you knew or you heard of that had cancer and that you had certain thoughts about what it was like versus what it was actually like? Was there any surprises for you when you went through it?
I always knew somebody who had cancer. I wasn't
Yeah.
close with anybody who had cancer. And then, of course, you start to meet people and you start to get to know people. And it seems like a lot of people are getting it these days, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had quite a few colleagues who suddenly got it, and a few passed away. And that was scary because it's the reality of it.
Right.
I kept going through it going, I'm going to be okay at the end. I still feel like that, even though right now the reality is even worse than it was when I started. Back when I first found out, I only had it in one spot, and now I have it in two at the same time.
Right.
And unfortunately, the chemo that they've chosen doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So I have a recurrence in the brain again.
Yeah.
And they can't do radiation on it because my tissues in the brain are too fragile from having it back to back.
Right.
So surgery is not an option at this point because I have to wait for this to calm down. So chemo is the only option right now, but that doesn't touch this.
Right.
So this is like a total faith thing right now. I have to just trust that it's going to be okay.
And how do you convince yourself that, like, and use your faith and also help your kids get through it?
Well, I guess, the whole crux of the Christian faith is believing in that this is just a temporary place that we live in. Mm-hmm. So, like, we saw this thing once, I forget the name of the guy, on YouTube, but he showed, like, our life as being like a big long rope, and life on earth is really only this short piece of it. And so even though, all these pieces in our life are important, like, I want to see my daughter and my son graduate. Mm-hmm. I want to see them get married. I want to hold their children.
Right.
I want all those things. I want to be 85. I complain about wrinkles now because of all the stuff I've gone through, but I want wrinkles when I'm 80, well, not when I'm 40. I want wrinkles when I'm 85. You know what I mean? But, I look ahead to this. So I think I'd rather not get there until I'm 85.
Right.
But keeping your eye on that prize type
And
thing.
just taking it day by day.
Yeah, it makes it doable.
I know even when someone has a death in the family or just anything that's something negative happening to somebody, lots of people will just shut them off because they can't handle it. They don't know if they're going to say the wrong thing when they talk to them and things like that. What's some advice for you to give to people who are either friends or family members of someone that's struggling with cancer that would be helpful in getting you through it?
Well, physically, I think one of the best blessings I've ever had is just meals.
Yeah.
Because especially ones you could put in the freezer.
Well, and healthy ones too, because lots of times people will give meals, if it has any kind of a sickness, they'll give meals with like lots of carbs or lots of things. And you know, the cancer thrives in certain environments, right?
Yeah.
So you need a certain specific diet, right?
My sister and a friend of ours set up a Take Them a Meal thing on Facebook, and they actually outline that.
And there's a page for you as well.
Yeah, my sister also set that up with when I had that brain surgery, just for updates, because that's another thing that's hard, is being on the phone all the time or texting.
And having to tell the same thing to everybody, whereas on Facebook you can just put one post. And
I don't mind talking to people, I love it, but what's hard is on my kids, because then suddenly I am not with them.
Right.
And that's what they hate, is that everyone works in the day and then they come home from work at 4 or 5, and then they all want to know how I'm doing.
Right.
And then my kids, you know, I have to put the phone away. I have to purposely ignore it for them. And that's, I think, the hardest in terms of that. In terms of people helping, I mean, my children are a little older, so if someone had younger kids, to maybe give them
babysitting.
Yeah, a bit of a break, taking the kids to the park.
Yeah.
At the same time, I always wanted to hold my kids so close. So when people wanted to take them away from me, I was like, really?
You're like,
I just want them there right now,
right.
you know? But the meal thing is great, because then you don't have to spend the time thinking or doing that. So again, you're with them, or that's how I felt. You know, it is hard to know what to say. And some people are really good about just saying just the right thing, and they just have that natural ability. I think that the worst thing is to let your own fear kind of glom onto like me.
Like dump it onto the person.
Yeah, like, or
like, are you gonna be okay?
Yeah, how can you do this? Oh my goodness. Like that, because then I'm like, what am I? You're right.
You're like, I didn't even think of it that way.
It takes a lot. Yeah. I've had that a couple times where they leave, and I'm just like, wow.
You're like,
now I feel worse, because they just made me. They made me so scared. They're making me so scared, and I have to go back to square one in terms of my thinking process and remembering those promises and the battle. Yeah. So,
what advice would you have for people that are actually going through what you're going through?
Again, it comes back to choice. Like, I keep thinking every day is a brand new day. And everybody, you know, you never know what can happen to you out there, right?
Yeah.
Car accidents and stuff. So I try to make the most of every day, just in terms of my attitude, I think.
Well, and that's what is so interesting, because Regine, I actually saw you at a women's conference, and the weekend I was like, I don't know why, I just had a baby, and I was like thinking, why am I even here? This is just such a waste of my time, because I wasn't really getting anything out of the conference at all. I was kind of just wandering around with this baby that was crying. I couldn't even go to the workshops because he was crying through them all. And then I saw you in the buffet line, and the conversation we had was so powerful to me, because you were such a positive person and a light, and just to have heard that you had gone through such a struggle, but you were still so positive, that was what was so attractive to me. And that made my whole weekend, was just, you know, seeing somebody that was going through something that, you know, you could have been a victim and being really like, poor me, but you just have so much light about you, and hope and faith, and I really respect that.
It definitely buoys me, my faith, for sure. But there are choices, like somewhere in the Bible, I have no idea where, but I've heard it said, it says something about you have a choice to choose life or to choose death. And so I just choose to choose life.
Well, thanks so much for coming and sharing your story. I know it's not easy, especially with cameras in your face, to be talking about something, you know, that's personal and intimate, but I hope that your story can, you know, impact just, even if it's just one person out there that might be going through something similar, either as a person struggling with it or a family member or friend learning how to deal with it. I hope that serves its purpose.
Going through any kind of trial, you hope that there's a reason behind it. And so if anybody, and people have said that a lot of people have been affected because of that Prayer for Regine page, thanks to my sister, and that was just really to get people informed. But a lot of people seem to have been very, very affected just by like that strength that they see. Ultimately, if somebody could actually make a faith decision because of this and see that I can't do this on my own, like there's no way
bigger.
that there's something bigger to all of this, you know, that would be a blessing for me to know that.